What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of HBO's The Sympathizer. The miniseries is out in full now on HBO. Of course, Sympathizer, a book adaptation from Park Chan-wook. Director Park co-wrote all the episodes, directed the first three as well. And this was a show that I think had a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation going in because, of course, it's adapting a critically acclaimed book that's not super old either, relatively recent novel, and of course has the producing involvement of Team Downey and of course the acting involvement of Robert Downey Jr., with Robert Downey Jr. kind of flashily, perhaps gimmickly, portraying several different characters over the course of the series. And I was invested really just because it's Park Chan-wook returning back to TV, and I loved his first TV show, The Little Drummer Girl, on AMC back in 2018. And of course, Park Chan-wook making a show for HBO, I have no qualms or doubts about its quality. And I think The Sympathizer is a strong miniseries, but it's ultimately a show that I didn't love as much as I wanted to. I have a lot of admiration for this show. There's a lot of craft. There's a lot of really strong filmmaking, especially in the beginning under director Park, but also Fernando Meirelles and Mark Munden, very accomplished directors in their own right as well. The show looks great, has awesome production design, really fun camera techniques and wipes and whatnot. That whole package is there. Ultimately, though, what left me a little bit cold to the show, which again, I enjoyed the show. I'm happy I watched the entire run. I just ultimately was a little bit lacking in a hook, in a forward momentum to some of the conflict with the show. And I think my biggest hang up with The Sympathizer, having now seen the whole series, is the framing device that the series is presented in, where you have Captain in a North Vietnamese or Vietnamese re-education camp post the fall of Saigon, post the Vietnam War. So we know he's returned to Vietnam, and now he's being interrogated by the people on his side. Of course, the captain was a spy for the North, spying on the South, serving, one of the Southern generals, whatnot, right? Because we start in media res with that framing device, we know what happens to the captain. To me, it kind of kills a lot of the stakes. It was a bit frustrating to go back and forth and going over his confession. And I just didn't feel like there was a lot of payoff with the keep re-editing and redoing of the confession. Sometimes it's a non-linear narrative. Sometimes Captain is, an unreliable narrator. The show doesn't commit to any of those angles consistently enough for me, and I found it a bit distracting at times. Where the finale goes made sense to me, but just didn't feel like quite strong enough payoff for all the dick teasing that this framing device was basically doing to us. When we removed all that and we just spent time in the, present, really the past, but just in the moment of whatever Captain was retelling, whether at the beginning of the series, where it's really, I think, grippingly in the days leading up to the fall of Saigon in Vietnam. I think all of that was excellent. But then, of course, when Captain flees alongside the general and his team and his family, and flees to America, and we watch Captain ingratiate himself into American society, and watching this Vietnamese community kind of popping up and trying to establish themselves while still having a desire, an inkling for a free, Republic of Vietnam and whatnot. All of that to me, I found quite compelling, and I feel like I get pulled out of it when we flash forward back to Captain at the table trying to retell his confession. It just, I don't know, I got a little frustrated by how that went, Ultimately, and the show is pretty broadly successful with what it's trying to tackle in terms of what identity means to someone, what culture means to someone. Of course, Captain is a biracial man, French father, Vietnamese mother. There's a twist-ish in the finale about we see who his dad is, and I don't know, to me that didn't really need to land per se. More than anything, I guess I have admiration for The Sympathizer because it's a Vietnam War era story that's actually focused on Vietnamese characters, the Vietnamese perspective. And in fact, you get a lot of those perspectives with this because we're looking at both sides of the conflict with the Vietnamese perspective for both sides. So there's a lot of good, I think, meat on that bone, and especially the kind of post-war perspective I thought was quite eye-opening. Again, because we don't really get a lot of that side on the Western filmmaking front, and the Sympathizer is literally acknowledging that because in episode 4, one of Robert Downey Jr.'s characters is a Hollywood film director, obvious stand-in for Francis Ford Coppola, and filming Apocalypse Now. I loved everything with the movie set. I loved everything with the general's daughter, Lana, and her willingness, openness to assimilating into American culture. And then you have the juxtaposing that with the general's really steadfast desire to latch back onto the old ways and take back what was lost. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Of course, Captain never quite knowing exactly where his allegiances lie. I was actually expecting that to be a little bit more played up than it ends up being. He seems pretty steadfast throughout the run of the series, even if ultimately he's having regrets when he has to commit the two murders and the ghosts that are literally haunting him. Some underrated comedy elements throughout the show. I love the lawyer negotiation, for example, when Captain gets injured on the film set. That was fun. And I do think the first murder, in particular in episode 3, where Captain knows he's basically killing an innocent man who's not the mole, and he's doing it basically to protect his own cover in a certain sense. That was tough. I thought that was played up well. That was gutting. I think Bond as well, and Bond's relationship with Captain is done very well. That also leads itself to the strongest of the Downey characters, which would be the CIA agent Claude character, partially because that's the one we see the most, but to me that's the most effective, that's the most well-rounded. The movie director character is pretty good as well. Then you have the Asian studies professor, which is pretty caricature, pretty one note to me. You have the politician guy, very also kind of one note on the other side of the coin. I could see this being frustrating, like Downey playing all these characters being distracting. It didn't really distract me per se, because ultimately, like, Downey's not the star or even anywhere close to the star of this show. Xuande really crushes the show, and he has to carry basically the whole thing. Like, Downey just kind of gets to, goof off basically and do very over the top things. And I think when he's playing like a very effeminate gay man as one of his covers, I thought that was like very caricature and very over the top, kind of frustrating. Other stuff though, it's fun, especially the scene when they're all the Downeys are together in the restaurant or whatever. That was pretty fun. But Xuande has to do a great job, and I think he really, really carries the show. Like, and if that performance isn't good, the show wouldn't work at all. So yeah, I think ultimately it's a success, even if I wasn't completely gripped by everything, completely gripped by its conclusion. But having all the craft on the filmmaking side, and then having, I think, really important and prescient and impactful and deep themes and interests in what it's trying to convey. Very few shows are able to really kind of nail that, especially in the miniseries front, where miniseries can often lean more into just plot payoff, and maybe Sympathizer could have used a little bit more plot focus, I suppose. I certainly would have liked the framing device removed, but nonetheless, successful show. That being said, Director Park, make another movie, please. Decision to leave. Let's follow that up. Let's go. But yeah, let me know, how did you feel about the Sympathizer? Did you have any hangups with aspects of the show? How successful do you think it was in the end? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.